Hey everyone, so today's video is going to be something a little bit different. This is my back garden, and what I wanted to just highlight was all of the little lights that I actually have installed. These are all solar lights, and what I've done is, because I have fencing going the length of the garden, right from the front of the garden right to the back, and I do actually have a few. Well, I have a few up there as well, and obviously you can see the main light there as well. But basically what I wanted to do was just showcase these particular lights, and what I'll do is I'll try and get some night clips as well, just to show the different modes as well. But it's one of those things where I think for what they are and for the cost of the actual product, depending on your scenario, these can be a really useful tool to actually have, and it's something that I'm really glad that I actually spent the money on and actually installed these. I have a few on the opposite side as well, going down the garden. These originally I actually installed, as you can see, we've got the washing line up here, and I don't know how well you'll actually be able to hear me with the wind. Originally I installed it just so then when we actually come out at night, obviously we do have the main light there, but that only shines probably to about this region here, and I just wanted something so if I'm ever just need to take the bins out, or if I just want to pop to the shed and get some tools, something like that, it just lights everything up. And it also adds a little bit of security as well, because if I do have a camera up there in the room as well, and this, if the lights come on, then it just kind of shows that obviously there's something moving about. Usually it's just animals. We have a lot of foxes and stuff, cats, everything just jumping over the fences. There's actually 2 holes there that I need to fill in to try and stop stuff digging through. But essentially the video is going to be about the different modes and which sorts of LEDs are worth getting and which ones aren't. I've actually tried quite a few of the ones off Amazon, and unlike most scenarios usually when you go with the recommended or the most expensive one that you can find, generally that tends to be the best. What I actually found with these particular ones was I actually ordered originally the most expensive ones off Amazon, and I was really disappointed with how they performed. I'll go over that more so the reason for that later in the video. But also this is your kind of daytime look, and as you can see they are relatively small. If I wanted to, and if I wanted to do an experiment, as you can see there's literally just 2 tiny little screws that go into the water. So these, in theory, you don't even need a drill for this. You could probably do this by hand if you're screwing into something like this, being a wooden panel. Ideally you could probably even mount them onto here. I personally didn't want to drill into the actual concrete post, that's why I've mounted them in that way. The one downside of having them like this is obviously these are motion activated as well, so depending on if they're too sensitive, what can happen is just as the panel actually rocks, it'll detect motion and the lights will come on. Also the settings on them, generally they have 3 settings, so you can have them off, you can have it, press the button and it comes on full brightness with motion. I believe the second setting is lower brightness with motion, and the third lower brightness on all the time, and then when it detects motion it basically comes on full brightness, and the third option is usually where it just stays on dim the whole night basically. So obviously as soon as it what you have here is your solar panel essentially, which is what recharges the lights, and in combination with your motion sensor, once it detects it's dark enough, it'll actually detect motion, and that's when it'll turn on. These won't turn on during the day, there's too much light. They'll only turn on once it gets dim enough, and it's usually probably about, I'd say, an hour or 2 after sunset, as opposed to being just right at sunset or anything like that. But as I say, what I'll do is I'll insert some night clips as well, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, so here we are back after dark, and as you can see these are the lights in action. So I've got all of these set to the first option, so as I approach them they will light up. And as you can see, if I just walk down the center sensitivity is high enough to where they will actually detect and turn on. Some of the bulbs have a slight issue, and this is one of the things that I wanted to actually mention in this particular review. Okay, so this is the Amazon choice, and it's probably one of the most expensive sets of LED solar lights that you can actually find on Amazon. And if we just click into it, firstly I'll tell you what I liked about these particular lights. As I say, I did actually purchase these previously. I purchased 2 sets. So the first thing I actually liked is, unlike all the other solar lights that you get, this actually has a clear coating over the top of it. So it's not really that noticeable in these pictures, but you can just see it around the edges of the actual light itself. Probably more, yeah, there in this picture it's more noticeable. You can just about see the fact that it's got a clear plastic cover over the whole thing. So effectively it's a lot more water resistant than any of the other lights that I've actually seen or purchased. Obviously the claims here regarding the solar cells being more efficient, more powerful, I didn't really find that to be true. I'll get onto the reason why I didn't actually like these towards the end. This was one of the reasons. So obviously this, as you can see, it's advertised saying it had a much wider illumination range, as well as the distance that I actually covered. Now what I found was, when I actually had these installed, in the earlier clip where I pointed out where my standard halogen floodlight actually reaches, probably about, I'd say, 6 to 8 feet maximum, and neither of these actually, and bear in mind that I had 2 paired up as well. I had same as I have it now, with two sets of LED lights up there, so, and it barely lit up that same area. As soon as I put on the floodlight, it was considerably brighter than what these lights actually gave me. And that was one of the things that I didn't like. One of the things that I did like was the fact that it had a smooth on and off. So unlike all of the normal kind of solar lights you get, where when they detect motion, it's a very sudden, sharp motion in which it turns the light on. It's off and then it's just on. Whereas what these would do is they'd slowly turn on and then slowly turn off. So it almost gave it a more premium type feel to the actual product itself. As I say, the build quality itself was pretty good. I can't knock that, and obviously the fact that you're paying extra for this, nearly twice the price, in fact, to the ones I actually ended up buying. It obviously shows that they've spent the money in trying to make it. In theory, it was a better design, but essentially what it came down to was 2 things. The first thing was the fact that I'm just scrolling through trying to see if I can actually find the reference. So the first bad point was the fact that obviously the illumination distance and angle as well wasn't what they claim here. I wasn't very impressed by it, and what I actually did was I had these just above my kitchen doors, and what I did was I actually had both of these installed. One of them actually stopped working a day after installation, so what I did was I swapped that for one of the ones that I had on the fence panels, and I noticed that the side that I had that cheaper light was actually a lot brighter, the coverage was better, and basically it was just a lot better. Bearing in mind that obviously these are slightly more pricey, so this was I basically paid £31 for a set of 2 of these. So for that reason, obviously I wasn't very impressed by it. The other thing that I did actually like about these actually have the functionality that you don't really see very often on LED lights anymore, and that's the fact that the button is actually at the back. So effectively what you have to do is set the mode before you actually put this into position, and I'll explain why that's important later on. Right, and this is effectively the sets that I ended up going for, and what I've actually got linked down below. So the actual LED count on this one, it says 162. That doesn't really matter that much. I've tested ones where it will say 120, 140, 180. Some of them even say 200, and the brightness is pretty much the same across the board. But if we just come into this, so as I mentioned before, the fact that the button was on the rear on the more expensive lights was actually a positive thing, and the reason for that is what actually happens, and you'll have noticed this with my outdoor shot where some of the lights weren't working. This button right in the middle, the one just below the ambient light sensor, what happens is on some of them, that button is slightly, it's not sealed right. So what happens is water creeps into there when it's really cold. It freezes and expands, and as a result, it breaks the switch. So what happens is as you push this center button in, there is no movement, there's no feeling, there's no tactile feedback, so you don't actually get a click. And as a result, what happens is the light gets stuck permanently in either an on position or an off position. And I've not actually taken one apart yet. What I might do is take some of the ones that aren't working on the fence panels. I might take one of those apart and just see if I can actually repair the light itself. But that's the only real downside of these particular lights that I've found. The fact that the weatherproofing, despite the fact that on one of these, so on this particular slide, it does actually say IP65 and frost resistant, which for the most part, most of them have been. But the two main things that I actually found with these particular lights is the fact that unlike this picture where it looks like the whole top is covered, the solar panel is a slight, it's a different surface essentially. And sometimes that can lift, which on its own isn't really that much of a problem. But it's mainly the button. The button is the weakest point. It's the one where just on here it's just the little dot to the right. So the bigger circle is the ambient light sensor. The smaller one is the actual power button, if you like. And that's what you use to actually switch between the modes. In terms of light output, as I said, this was higher than the one that I'd actually purchased for more. In terms of angles and stuff, it helps having those ones on the side depending on how and where you mount it. I have two mounted at the front of my house on the actual cladding on my house, and in that location especially, having the side lights really does when they come up, actually light up, it does actually give a really nice effect. And because I've got them either side of my bay window, it looks really good. I liked it so much that originally I actually tried leaving it on to have the setting so then it's dim for the whole night, but basically they'd only last about maybe 3-4 hours and then the battery will just die out. And the problem is with all of these kind of solar lights is once the battery dies out, it takes a couple of days of sunshine where they're not actually utilized before it'll then hold charge again. And obviously if the battery completely dies out, a lot of the times, as I found, is that they can just go completely dead. But essentially the good thing about these is that for the money, bearing in mind these are $23.95, and then you've got the option of the £3 voucher as well. So basically it'll drop down to £20.95, so £21. For £21 you're getting two solar lights, and basically once you paid for it, that's it. They're free after that, aren't they? So it means that for me personally, I wanted to light up certain locations where I didn't want to wire permanent lights. I didn't want to run wiring and stuff like that. So that's where obviously solar lights do help you out quite a lot. And especially for what essentially what I ended up doing was I put a few on the actual fence panels at the front of the garden, the front garden, the front driveway. And because I like the look so much, I ended up putting some at the back garden, and I literally just kept ordering them, adding more and more. I probably don't need as many as I've ended up installing, but it's just one of those things where basically it's a long-term investment, and once you paid for it, that's it. You're not paying anything for electricity or anything like that. It's literally just install it and job done.